Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Going over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
I'll make a motion for approval of the agenda as posted.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we have the minutes of the November 16th meeting.
I have a correction. It's the November 18th
18th.
meeting.
Okay.
They're right.
I'll make a motion
Oh,
for
yeah, you're right.
approval of the minutes of the November 18th, 2024 regular board meeting.
Second.
All right, discussion, changes? Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. And before public participation, I'd like to move my board president report up and make a few statements. First of all, I'd just like to have a moment of silence for the students, staff, and families of the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison for the events that happened today. Then, I'd like to make a statement. We want to inform the East Troy community that Dr. Hibner remains on a medical leave of absence as he recovers from a bilateral carotid artery dissection suffered on November 11th. This is a rare condition which led to a TIA, or transient ischemic attack, or a series of mini strokes. Please join me in wishing him well for a speedy recovery. During his absence, superintendent-level responsibilities are being handled by Amy Fospanchik. As always, building principals are available to address families and student needs. Thank you for understanding and support during this time. And another statement. The East Troy Community School District Board of Education is aware of a plea deal that has been reached in the criminal case of John Rash, a former teacher of East Troy Middle School. This has been an ongoing legal issue for several years involving allegations made by former students against Mr. Rash. Because this is a matter involving students, personnel, and criminal and civil litigation, we are unable to comment on the specifics of the case other than to emphasize the importance of respect for all individuals involved. Additionally, we want our families and community to know that our board, administrators, faculty, and staff are committed to the learning, safety, and well-being of all our students. We will continue to work to support our students in any way we can. From there, we'll move into public participation. Is there anybody that would like to speak tonight? Jean? No? Okay. Financial report.
I move the approval of November 2024 payments in the amount of $2,036,535.75 and receipts in the amount of $400,647.96 as reflected on the financial statements.
I'll second it.
All right, discussion? Questions? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion action items. First one is staffing retirements.
Okay, we have one retirement for Barbara Heikiewicz. I will read the letter that she presented. Dear Amanda, Dr. Hibner, and the East Troy School Board, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from the East Troy Community School District. I will be formally retiring due to my ongoing health challenges. I would like to thank Amanda for all of her support. In addition, I am grateful to the school board that extended my leave after my surgery to enable me to try to get back to work. I regret that I am unable to return. I want you to know that I truly loved this job, but also know that I simply cannot perform the tasks any longer since my surgery. To my wonderful coworkers, students, and parents, it has been a rewarding and valued experience working with you over the years. I will forever hold those memories close to my heart. To the student that I worked with, I cannot express how rewarding it has been to watch you grow. I will miss your wonderful smiles. I will hold those memories close to my heart. Please let me know if I can help during the transition and wish you all the best.
I move the acceptance of the retirement for Barbara Hodkowitz.
I'll second it.
All right, discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is that the only one tonight? Okay. Next item, review state report cards for each school and the entire district.
So I get to review the district report card, and then the building principals will review each of their building report cards. So as a reminder, these report cards are released each year by the state of Wisconsin, and we usually review them around this time in December. So there's a presentation, it's kind of behind us. The report cards are also in your board packet. So the report card includes data from state assessments in math and ELA, including the Wisconsin Forward exam in grades 3 through 8, the pre-ACT Secure in grades 9 and 10, and the ACT in grades 11. It also includes the Dynamic Learning Maps assessment, which measures academic progress of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. It does also include information about chronic absenteeism, attendance, and graduation. Overall, we want to emphasize that the report card is one measure of our students and our schools. Our district report card overall score is 68.3. Last year's score was 70.0. As a district, our overall rating meets expectations. The overall score for the report card, our district report card, and then similar with our building report cards, is calculated by 4 weighted priority areas. This is a weighted average of achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation measures. It's important to note that the weights of achievement and growth change by building and district. This is calculated by the percentage of students who are identified as economically disadvantaged. The more weight is given to growth scores for more students identified as economically disadvantaged. I'm going to move into the 4 areas. So the first is the achievement score. So this score is traditionally calculated using the last 3 years of data in ELA and math, and it gives more weight to the most recent years. There are some important changes to note regarding the achievement score this year. The state uses 4 performance level descriptors to categorize students by score. Previously, these were below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. And in 23-24, they changed these 4 categories to be developing, approaching, meeting, and advanced. These categories are used to calculate the achievement score based on the number of students who fall into each of those 4 categories. So in addition to changing the names of the categories, the state also updated the cut scores for all state assessments, effectively lowering the minimum score that is needed to be considered meeting or previously proficient. The reasoning that they provided for this is to bring Wisconsin more in line with surrounding states, so that as we're compared to other states, we appear to be more in line with them. The previous cut scores were aligned to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is an international assessment. Those cut scores are much higher. So they've lowered them to be more in line with states versus the international standard. As a result, the state of Wisconsin has said that this year's assessment results in math and ELA cannot be compared to previous years in individual student scores or in the percentage of students who fall into those 4 performance levels. So when it comes to the report card, there's a couple important things to understand. The state chose to lower the cut scores, which improves the measure by which they are compared to other states, willing to accept that those scores would not be comparable to previous years. However, in calculating the measure by which we're compared to other schools and districts, the state actually modified how the achievement score is calculated. The reason that they gave is the need for districts to be able to compare the report card to previous years. And in that modification, they engaged in what they're calling scale adjusting, which in their words, in effect, lowers achievement scores. When the state lowered the achievement scores, they used a formula that has not been released to districts. And so some scores in that process were essentially overcorrected, and they ended up lower than previous years. To account for this, if the state's modification of scores resulted in a lower 23-24 achievement score than in 22-23, the state just used the 22-23 data instead. So they did not disclose to us which specific report cards had this replacement, but we can tell based on the achievement data that 3 of our report cards use the 22-23 data. That's Prairie View, the high school, and our district report card. So all of the achievement numbers match last year's achievement numbers, telling us that they overcorrected in their scale adjusting and then simply replaced last year's data with the year before. DPI has said over the next year they are going to gather a group of educators to help align the report card cut scores to more accurately communicate the success of schools and districts in the future. We don't have much information about that. So with all that being said, the district's achievement score of 66.2 is not a representation of how students performed in 23-24 because the state used 22-23 data instead. We do continue to be above state average in both ELA and math, and we score higher in achievement than 66.8% of districts in the state. I'm going to move on to growth. The growth score is a measure of students' growth over time compared to the growth of similar students in Wisconsin. The state determines similar students based on previous year's achievement and student characteristics outside of the school's control. Our growth score this year is 63.2, down a bit from last year's 64.1. We're just below the state average in ELA and math of 66.0, and our growth is the same or higher than 48.9% of districts in the state. I'm going to move to On Track to Graduation. This is a score that measures how successfully students are achieving educational milestones that lead to post-secondary readiness. It includes 3 main components. The first is chronic absenteeism, which measures students who are absent for 10% or more of school days out of the total days that they were enrolled. The second is attendance in graduation. This measures the percentage of days that students were in attendance at school and the percentage of students who graduated within 4 years. And the third is select achievement at key transition points, so specifically 3rd grade ELA and 8th grade math. This area uses lagged attendance data, so the attendance, graduation, and chronic absenteeism scores are calculated using 22-23 data. So our score this year is 85.9. It's actually the same as last year. We saw improvements in achievement at 3rd grade ELA and 8th grade math. Both scores grew from last year and are above the state average. We did see a dip in chronic absenteeism from 86.4 last year to 85.4 this year, but we remain above the state average of 80.1. Because the chronic absenteeism score is calculated using lagged data, and it's a 3-year average, it's important to note that this year's score included 22-23, 21-22, and 20-21 data. Some of those years will clearly show impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic still. And our graduation rate was 96.8, which is well above the state averages of 91.8. I know that Stacy will talk a little bit more about that when she presents about the high school. Last but not least is target group outcomes. So this is like a mini report card of the target group of students determined by the state. It's based on last year's test results, and the state identifies the bottom 25% of performance of any students who were less than proficient on the DLM. This score does include achievement, growth, and the On Track to Graduation measures. Our score this year is 57.3, down from last year's 63.3. The target group improved in achievement in ELA and math from last year and did grow more than non-target students in ELA. Chronic absenteeism continues to be an area of concern for this group, with students in this group with a score of 78.9, and for non-target group students, the score is 89.2. It's a lot of information about the district's report card. Are there any questions about how it's calculated or the district's report card?
Is DPI ever going to get their act together?
I don't have an answer to that question.
They don't either.
No. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Lindsay, who's going to talk a little bit about Little Prairie. Just as a reminder, she's coming up here. They have a slightly different measure of achievement.
You did a good job explaining it. It changes every year, so someday, maybe.
Yes, so if you look at the Little Prairie report card, it truthfully has very little information on it. The bulk of the information that's on a school's report card comes from the state test. And since the grade levels at Little Prairie are not tested, there's not a ton of information on the report card itself other than some demographic information, some attendance information. So I have shared this with you before, but what the state asks for schools who have students who are not tested is what they call alternate accountability information. So each year I am asked to submit a goal in the area of literacy, math, and attendance, and then report out on the progress of that goal. So truthfully, from year to year, our goal areas, or our goal, the focus of those goals doesn't change a whole lot. And especially in the area of literacy, it very well reflects much of the information I share with you around our school learning objective, and we just talked about that not that long ago. So in literacy, our goal was that at least 80% of our students would either score above a certain level in kindergarten and first grade based on the measure that we used. In second grade, it was that 80% of our students would show a year or more of growth in the area of reading, according to a certain assessment measure. And we met that goal. So that's great. Aligned our work there, and let me know if you want to know kind of all the nitty gritty. I can share with you, the details of the assessments used and all of that if you want to know. But so that literacy work really reflective of much of what we've been talking about with Act 20 and the science of reading and all of that. In math, our goal was that at least 80% of our students in kindergarten, first and second grade would score at or above the 25th percentile in math, according to the assessment that we use is called the FAST assessment. And we came super close, 78% of our students. So our percentages ended up being 81% in 5K and 81% in second grade, a little bit lower at 72% in first grade. So averaged out to 78% of our students who were above that 25th percentile. And then attendance, we always aim for that 95% attendance rate, and we calculate that based on kind of overall days. So all the days possible for students to attend as compared to the number of days actually attended. And we were at 94% last year. So we've been kind of slowly working our way back to, I hate to still talk about COVID, but to those pre-COVID numbers. It's taken a little while to get there, but getting closer. Any questions about any of that? I feel like a bit of a broken record with this. I feel like I share much of the same thing every year at this time.
That's good.
Okay.
So I get to share for Mark, as he's not able to attend tonight. So I'll be talking about Prairie View. And I know that Mark would emphasize that there's a lot to be proud of at Prairie View, past just the report card number. Prairie View is very proud of their traditions, their school culture, students and staff engagement, and the hard work that all the students, staff, everyone in that building puts in every day to move the learning needle. Also this year, we can be very proud of our report card score. The overall score increased from last year from 72.4 to 73.4, and it continues to exceed expectations. In the priority weights that make up the overall score, we do see a little bit of a shift in how growth and achievement are weighted from last year. So again, this is based on the percentage of students who are identified as economically disadvantaged. So last year, 21.8% of students were identified as economically disadvantaged, and then this year it's 24.2. So with that, we see a movement of the priority weight to shift more towards growth than achievement. In the coming years, as we see that trend continue, we'll likely see impacts on the overall score as well. And I know Mark would also share that as we see cohorts move through different buildings, we likely will see impacts on that overall score as well, based on kind of all that information we've been talking about around different cohorts at Lindsay's building currently, and the needs that they have. The building does spend a lot of intentional time focusing on reviewing data, especially our local assessments that are directly related to what students learn in the classroom, and MAP assessments, which allow for more immediate feedback and also more immediate celebration and intervention. Prairie View's achievement score from also from 22-23 because of the state's modifications. So this year it remains at 79.7. With achievement, it is very important to note that ELA achievement is an area of focus for elementary schools, especially with the work and the professional learning that they're doing related to Act 20 and the science of reading. Prairie View is focusing on both math and ELA performance for their SLO, which Mark talked about in November. In growth, this year's score is up, is 57.5, up from last year's 55.6, and it's especially worthy of noting the improvement in the ELA score from last year. This year is 58.4, and last year was 52.7. The staff's goal at Prairie View last year was specifically focused on improvement in reading, and we see that borne out in these numbers. The target group outcomes also rose. This year is 61.7, up from 59.0 last year. Each area measured in target group outcomes improved from last year's scores, and the target group equal to or more than non-target group peers. The on track to graduation score rose to 88.4 from 88.6 last year. Each measure also showed improvement from last year's scores, and specifically important to note is the third grade reading. Again, this is an important measure of future academic success, and it shows that Prairie View students are above state average in proficiency at 73.4. And again, this is a continued area of focus at Prairie View due to Act 20. It requires professional learning for teachers in grades K through 3, but we as a district and the board approved extending that to grades 4 and 5 as well. So all of our elementary teachers are engaging in that professional development around the science of reading to ensure that literacy growth is a continued area of focus in these critical years.
All right, good evening. I will share the middle school report card here. All honesty, I was hoping to have better news this year, but I think with the changes that DPI put into place, we still have a lot of good things to highlight. Most of all being our achievement did rise. I know Taylor talked about using 22-23 data if 23-24 did not improve. They actually seem to use our 23-24 data, suggesting that our achievement scores did actually go up and improve. So something to highlight there overall, but just taking it through our overall, obviously went from a 57.5 to a 57.2, so pretty much stayed the same there. Our achievement data went from a 57.5 to a 61.0. In terms of ELA, score went from a 56.8 to a 59.3. Which is 1.2 points above the state average. In terms of the developing for ELA, only 10.9% of our students were in the developing category, which is below the state average of developing of 18.5%, so pretty well below that, which is a good thing in that level. Math score went from a 58.1 to a 62.7, which is 7 points above the state average. So our overall achievement scores really are on a good upward trajectory, which is good to see. In math, 11.5% were in the developing category. State average is 21.3% in developing, so doing well on that as well. Normally, I would have a little bit more narrative in terms of comparing different groups. This year we can't due to the fact that they tell us we can't compare scores, so it's hard to look at percentages. It's not really apples to apples this year. So overall achievement, I think we are in the right trajectory. Even looking at our MAP data, I think that would suggest the same, as we're moving in the right direction in terms of achievement. For growth, this is where we did take our biggest hit. Score went from a 44.2 to 39.4. ELA, pretty similar, but went from a 35.6 to a 37.5. Still below the state average, but did see an increase in growth there. Math was our biggest hit. went from a 52.7 to a 41.3, which is interesting because when I look at MAP data growth, it kind of shows the opposite. Math had a little bit higher growth than ELA. I think it just speaks to the volume of snapshots of these kids in one test, in one scenario. MAP test, they did pretty well. Forward testing, we got the scores back. We thought there was good growth. Didn't turn out that way in the report card. So again, still happy with where we're going. For target group outcomes, overall target group score went from 43 to a 39.9. But in those 4 categories, achievement, growth, chronic absenteeism, and attendance, the only one that went down, again, was growth. So in terms of those 4 categories, I think we're doing really well. Achievement in our target group went from a 13.7 to a 19.5. ELA went from 14.1 to 19.4. Math was 13.2 to 19.5. Again, growth is one that hurt us in the target group, went from a 50.8 to a 44.2. ELA with a slight drop, but again, math had the larger drop from a 60.3 to a 48.9. For chronic absenteeism, stayed pretty much the same at 67.9, very close to last year. And then our attendance did a slight increase from 89.8 to 92.3 for our target group. In terms of action plans for target group, we are really focusing on our UDL practices this year, Universal Design to Learning, implementation to really better serve and support all learners in the classroom, with an emphasis on our co-teaching teams as well. We have some new, in the last couple of years, co-teaching teams, and we really are emphasizing coaching those teams and supporting the UDL practices to support all students in the classroom. On track to graduation, rose slightly from 81.5 to 82.7. Chronic absenteeism took a slight dip down to 85.6 from 86.9, still above the state average of 80.5. School-wide attendance went up about a point, up to 93.4. And then our 8th grade math predictor improved this year from 48.8 to a 55.5, which is did get us above the state average of 54.5. And then student group chronic absenteeism rate, all students went from 20.3% to 12.3%, below state average of 19%. And then overall, I think obviously the growth score is where we really got dinged the most in terms of report card, but again, it's one snapshot. I like where we're going in terms of our academic performance, not just in the forward exam, but looking at classroom assessment data, MAP data. I think we're still moving in the right direction. So even though our overall score isn't where we'd like it to be, I'm still satisfied, and I believe in the work we're doing here, and I think we will see those scores move up eventually. So, thank you.
Good evening. Stacy Keene, principal at East Troy High School. I'm happy to report to you our report card scores. So this year, our overall score is 76.1. We continue to exceed expectations. If you see in comparison to last year our students with disability was at 9%. This year we're at 11.2. Last year economically disadvantaged was at 20, and we're at 23.2. So if you look at our target groups, is that your next slide, Taylor? Our target groups is the area that continues to grow, so that target group for us continues to expand. Every other score, ironically, our growth score was exactly the same, and our achievement score was exactly the same. I find that a little ironic. I don't know if that's because of the new tricky formula. I don't know why that is, but overall, our growth and achievement remained the same. Our school report card, although we're in the same category, our overall points are a tad bit down. That has to do with 2 categories. The ones on the bottom are target group. We dug into that this fall. Our math scores for students that are identified with a learning disability have dipped just a tad, so we're working on supporting those students through what we call a learning center
to really dig into some of those skills outside of the classroom, plus the co-teaching within the classroom. And then On Track to Graduation dipped a little bit. I learned something new this year when we looked at our DPI data compared to the data that I had for East Troy High School. Our graduation numbers did not match. So if a student that has an IEP that continues past, we've talked at this before, past 4 years is counted as a non-grad. Well, my numbers and the state numbers weren't the same. What I learned was if students go to Lakeland School and never are in the East Troy walls, I'm gonna call them, because I've learned they are within our school district, but some of these kids, to be very frank with you, I didn't recognize the names. They also counted as non-grads because they continued at Lakeland. Learned something new every day. So we had about 6 students that were considered non-grads, all of which had IEPs, and by the IEP process, were deemed to benefit from continuing in high school. So that is why our On Track to Graduation is a tiny bit down, but our number is still 91.2. So overall, our graduation percentage is, in my opinion, very good. Post-secondary preparation, again, these numbers are not factored into our report card. They're just reported out on. So advanced placement AP scores, this will be interesting. It's about the same as it was last year. However, if you take a look, these are usually, these are 2 years delayed. So this isn't last year, this would be the year before. Does that make sense? It's a year behind your cohort, if you will. So this year, we have added AP classes. So this year, we have AP Econ tests that kids will take. So it'll be interesting for next year to see what our numbers are. But again, the state average is at 21. We're at about 25 for our AP scores, or students that take advantage of our AP classes. Dual enrollment, we're at 70.8. The state is at 25.7. Each try, I hold a coffee and conversations with parents. What I've learned, we went through the report card, that's what we did this month, and what I've learned is parents have no idea what dual enrollment is. They don't know that that is college-level coursework that you take at East Troy High School that can transfer depending on the university. We have 5 classes that UW-Madison takes that are gateway classes. You know, your freshmen can take Microsoft Office, which transfers 3 credits into Madison. You know, if you took that, we have freshmen that took that first trimester. They have 3 UW, college credits that UW-Madison would even take. We hold them as the standard. They're the most picky usually. And so it was an aha moment for me. So we'll continue to try to market dual enrollment because our number compared to not only the state, but really pull up anybody else's state report card is pretty phenomenal. Through those dual enrollment classes, students can earn industry credentials. So that's usually a pathway or a coursework of classes that earns them some sort of certification, whether that's Microsoft, a robotics certification. There's different certifications that kids can earn. So we're at 21.6, and the state is at just under 5%. Again, that usually has to do with our dual enrollment. And work-based learning, we are below the state average. What's important, I feel like, to ensure that everybody knows, is that work-based learning and youth apprenticeship are not the same program. So even though we have very high numbers in youth apprenticeship students, which we are very proud of, that's a state credential that could go on to your industry recognized certification, work-based learning is not. That's simply like you leave work to go to a work experience. So that is not a number that we are striving to beat the state in. That's really the only one that we don't really place much creed in. We usually try to get students on a pathway that leads to some sort of a credential versus just leaving for work. Any questions for the high school? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any questions overall on the report card? Okay. Thanks, Taylor. Move on to the approval of the 25-26 school year calendar.
So much stayed the same. On the school year calendar, you'll find it on page 83 of your packet. When we make changes to this calendar, it's generally based around educator feedback and suggestions made by different advisory groups or educators. So one change that was based on educator feedback this year was an alignment of elementary conference days. So in the past, there's been a couple times where Prairie View and Little Prairie would have parent-teacher conferences on different nights. Based on educator feedback, those are aligned throughout the school year, so those conferences will all take place on the same night. Additionally, we do have another change, which is we used to have back-to-back in-service days in the end of October. So we'd have 2 in-service days and then usually a day off. We no longer have those back-to-back in-service days because in the past, they were used as really data retreat days, especially at elementary, to really examine that fall assessment data and determine intervention needs and groups. Because of the changes of Act 20, that really isn't a process that we'll be going through anymore because Act 20 dictates which students will be receiving reading intervention. So we've reduced that to 1 day, which allowed us to move that other in-service day into early May, which not only allows for us to kind of connect with the spring assessment window a little bit more, but also gives a little bit of a break for students and families in that long stretch between spring break and Memorial Day. We continue to have 3.6 days built into the calendar for potential weather cancellations. I do want to note one change, which is there's been a change in the National Weather Service's extreme cold warnings. Previously, that kind of cutoff point was at -35. They've moved that to -30. So that change could potentially increase the number of cold weather days we will have to take off because we make our determinations based on the warning. And so we'll be sending communication home to families to make sure everyone is aware, but just be aware that in the future that could have an impact on the school calendar.
So cold. I move the approval of the 2025-2026 school year calendar as it was presented to us.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion, questions on it?
Is that -30 the wind chill or the true air temperature?
I did double check, and they've merged wind chill into the temperature, so it's with wind chill, is my understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's cold.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Not as cold if it's actually -30 though.
Right, exactly.
Then your wind chill
That's
is
much
even
worse.
lower.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I'm
I
with you.
just had to make sure.
I'm
It's-
with you,
it's-
but
I think it matters.
it's cold. Something happens with the bus or something, that's cold.
All right, any other questions?
I'm cold right now.
All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We got the 2025-2026 high school planning guide.
Taylor again.
It's me again. So I have a summary of changes for you on page 84. I'm not going to read all of these changes, but I'm going to try and hit the big ones. So the first one is personal finance is now a graduation requirement. This was determined by the state in December of last year. So they signed it Wisconsin Act 60, which requires that all students starting with this year's freshman class have to take a half credit of personal financial literacy. So we already offer that course, and about 75% of our students already took that course. It's now just a graduation requirement, so that's now noted in the guide. Also, this will be reflected in upcoming Neola policy updates. So just as those policies come through, that will also be recorded in there. The second thing is the course planning guide reflects the approvals that you guys approved in November. So that includes the addition of 3 new courses, as well as the change for pre-calculus to AP and the change for speech to Law Day. I'm going to skip to the 4th bullet point, which is a name change. Exploring agriculture is now going to be agricultural studies. This change is specifically intended to clarify the difference between exploring agriculture taken in the middle school and agriculture studies taken at the high school. As we hired a full-time ag position last year, these are some of the changes that we've seen necessary. Number 6, we have removed 3 family and consumer science courses in a hospitality pathway. These courses were previously offered by Gateway as part of a certification process. Gateway no longer supports those classes or runs them, and so we have removed them from our course guide as well, as they're no longer transcripted or supported through Gateway. We've also removed an elective offering called Communication Technology. This class last ran in 2019-2020, and it focused on using tech tools, many of which are no longer cutting edge as they were when the course was begun. And also, some of the content of that course is now going to be covered in that Writing for New Media class that you approved in November. There's some additional cosmetic and course flowchart updates, really trying to clarify for students how to move through the course planning guide, as well as what industry certifications they can reach while in high school. So that's the high school's course planning guide.
Well, I will make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 high school planning guide.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And we have the 25-26 middle school planning guide.
It's me again. So the middle school planning guide had a couple of changes as well. Most are just name and course description updates, but I'm going to hit a few of the highlights. There were some updates to agriculture course names. These are intended to build more clarity about what each portion of agriculture will be focused on in each trimester, really just helping students with the course selection process. Same with art. We see course name changes to just clarify for students when different types of art, specifically 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional, will be taught in that class. These are all curriculum items that existed within the coursework, but we're just updating the name to better reflect so that students are able to select courses more clearly. We also have a name change from modern band to modern music. We saw many students who saw modern band on their schedule and thought that they had to come with a trumpet or a clarinet. And so with this change, we're really hoping to clarify that this is a music appreciation course. It's not band specific. Again, no major content changes, but just a name change to better clarify for students. We have removed programming physical devices from the course planning guide. This was offered to 8th grade students during 3rd trimester. It only ran once in 2020-2021. Course requests have consistently been higher for programming games, and the teacher who teaches our programming courses, Nolan Pavelski at the high school, does not have 3 trimesters of time available. So to just remove any confusion, we've chosen to remove that from the guide. And last but not least, there's some updates to the wording of mathematics acceleration on page 6. No really meaningful change to the way that students progress through math. We're really aiming to add transparency so that we can better communicate to parents and students what criteria is being used for that decision-making process, when that decision-making process happens, and also we'll be working to just increase communication with families in more of a collaborative sense around that big decision about math acceleration. So again, not really a content change, but a communication change so that we're just a little bit clearer.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 middle school planning guide.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we have the summer.
Can I ask a
Oh, go ahead.
question? It's related, but not really. Can we see maybe, just even via email, numbers for Spanish and agriculture?
Like enrollment numbers?
Yeah.
Mhm. Do you want this year's enrollment numbers, or do you want course requests for next year?
How about both?
Okay.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Course requests will be done probably in January, February. So
Yeah.
when I have those numbers,
Yeah,
I
I'm
can
just
send both.
curious.
Yep,
With those ads.
absolutely.
Okay, our summer school dates for 2025.
So much stays the same here. We don't see any major changes to how summer school will be structured. Elementary summer school, not for credit and credit recovery classes, will be June 16th to July 10th. As usual, they'll run Monday through Thursday. With the 4th of July being on a Friday, we will not have summer school classes on the 3rd as well. So that will remain a 3-day week. And finally, for credit, classes at the high school do need additional days to meet the time requirements, as like to match the amount of time they would spend in the classroom if they took it during the school year. And to make that possible with the in-service day at the end of the year this year, we'll actually be moving that additional week to after. So it'll be from June 16th to July 17th will be the 4-credit high school classes.
All right.
Thank you.
Notice of school board election.
Notice is hereby given that an election is to be held in the East Troy Community School District on Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. The following offices are to be elected to succeed the present incumbents listed. The candidates receiving the highest number of votes will fill the regular term up for election and serve a 3-year term beginning April 28th, 2025, and ending the 4th Monday in April of 2028. School Board Member Ted Sess, 3-year term. School Board Member Adam Wickowitz, 3-year term. Notice is further given that a campaign registration statement and a declaration of candidacy must be filed no later than 5 p.m. on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, in the office of the school district clerk at 2040 Beulah Avenue in East Troy, Wisconsin. Notice is further given that if a primary is necessary, the primary will be held on Tuesday, February 18th of 2025. A description of the school district boundaries can be obtained from the school district office.
Thank you. And the last item, employee grievance, will be in closed session. Reports, looks like Taylor's going to do one for
It's just
Amy.
me. So I have an update, the minutes from the November Student Learning Subcommittee. 2 topics were discussed. The first is an update on the middle school grading model. So during that time, we really discussed the work that the staff has put in to make sure that assessments and grading practices best reflect students' skills and really are clear communication throughout the trimester of where a student is in their skill attainment towards a standard. We've additionally been putting a lot of time in this year with our grading committee on family communication. So they've spent time updating the look of the report card to really better communicate the specific grades and make sure it's clear kind of what grade goes with which course, as well as working on the comments that will be on report cards, ensuring that every class has a comment and that those comments communicate something clearly about the student's proficiency level, not just that the student was in class or was a joy to have or things like that, really discussing their skills. Surveys will be coming out in January for students, families, and staff to kind of do a check-in on where we are with the grading model and make updates and changes as needed. We're in a learning year, so we're all getting feedback and learning and working through the process, which does come with updates as we have worked through those things. And then the second agenda item was the school and district data, which is connected to the report card information we shared tonight.
Thank you.
All right, then we have policy review and development, 3rd reading of the Neola policies.
I promise this is my last thing. I just want to note that as this is the 3rd reading, if you approve these policies tonight, these Neola policies will not actually go into effect until all Neola policies have been approved. So you're approving it so that when all Neola policies have been approved by you, they can all go into effect at once. That keeps any confusion from like where policies are cross-referenced or things like that.
With that, can we table this till the next meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does
There's
anybody
no
have se-
action here anyways, it's just
Yeah.
the 3rd reading of it.
Great.
So it'll come back again in January for another 3rd
Great.
reading. Okay. That's fine.
Thank you.
Communications announcements. I heard Amy has one.
Rachel Neubauer is our transportation director. She is unable to be here tonight, but I have a message from the transportation department. They're trying to get the word out about a safety concern that the department has, and I can read a write-up that Rachel prepared for the board meeting tonight. The transportation department has an ongoing safety concern that we are actively trying to prevent: red runners. It is a car that does not stop for a school bus's red lights and stop arm. The law states vehicles are supposed to stop at least 20 feet from the bus in either direction. Failure to do so can result in a $300 to $500 fine. School buses give warning by turning on their yellow warning lights 100 feet ahead of the stop. Contrary to what they're seeing on the road, this means to slow down and prepare to stop, not speed up and try to beat the red lights on the bus. They did get new cameras last spring, and so the stop arms on the bus have cameras that allows them to catch any vehicle's license plate and submit any violations to law enforcement to issue a citation. In the first 60 days of school, they have submitted 47 red runners to law enforcement. That's 78% of the school days where there was a driver who passed the red stoplight or the arm on the bus. They try to schedule it so most stops are not crossovers where students are crossing a lane of traffic, but there are some crossovers, so there's even students that need to walk across a lane of traffic to get to the bus. So they're trying to get the word out. Not only is there the fines for the drivers, but also the major concern is for the safety of the students when they're boarding the bus. Usually a stop only takes 30 seconds. And so they're asking, everybody to help keep the students safe. Student safety is worth everybody's time to make sure you're aware and that you stop for the school bus when they're picking up students. Statistics show it is a nationwide problem. However, it's also a problem here as well. So the department has a committee they formed to try to educate the community and reduce this number. If you have any suggestions on how to get the word out or how to better make sure traffic stops for the buses, please contact Rachel Neubauer in the Transportation Department.
All right, thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Future items, anybody have anything? Okay. Then I will make a motion to go into executive session for discussion and to take action regarding an employee grievance as provided under State Statute 19.851C and 19.851F.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Adam?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We are in closed session.